Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
I can't even believe the audacity of my niece. Her name is Keisha, 14 female. She's my husband's sister's daughter. Lately, she's become more and more rebellious to the point that her own parents actually kicked her out. She's been suspended from school twice this year and is on her way to getting expelled. Both times she got suspended were for starting fights with other girls. She has a hot temper for an eighth grader. Of course, her parents were pissed when she got sent home from school. But when they sat her down to talk about it, she actually ended up attacking her mom. Her dad pulled her off and kicked her out. He told her she wasn't welcome to stay there until she got her act together. And that was the end of that. I think Keisha stayed at a friend's house that night, and then the next day she ended up on our doorstep. My husband and I both work from home, so we were both here when she showed up. At first, we were confused because we hadn't heard anything about her suspension and the fight with her parents yet. But of course, we let her in because she's family. She told us that her parents had kicked her out the day before for no reason at all. She said that her mother had gotten physical with her and that she was scared, so she came to us. Even as she was saying all this, we were skeptical. We knew Keisha had been on a bit of a mean streak lately, so my husband snuck away to call his sister and get the full story. Of course, she told him the whole truth. They said it broke their hearts to do it, but they genuinely didn't feel safe with her in the home anymore, so they kicked her out. And my brother-in-law said he was done letting her off easy for her behavior. If she was going to learn, she needed to learn the hard way. But my husband has always had a soft spot for his niece. He couldn't help but invite her to stay with us for the time being. We don't have any kids yet, so we have plenty of room for her to stay. I was nervous about the whole idea because I have no experience with children, let alone a violent one. But I agreed. It was better she stayed with us rather than some random friend until things cooled down between her and her parents. The first night was fine. She was on her best behavior, and we actually had a nice dinner all together. My husband and I were hoping that her entire stay with us would be like this. We thought maybe she just needed a break to think things through, and this would actually be good for her. But unfortunately, the peace didn't last long. The next day, we woke up and followed our usual routines while getting ready for work. We took our showers, played music in the kitchen while we made breakfast, and then headed into our home office by 8 a.m. to start our day. Keisha didn't come out of the guest room until about 11:30. We heard her shuffling around the kitchen, and we came out to see if she wanted to join us for lunch. Just by looking at her, we could tell that wouldn't be the case. She looked rough and gave us a look that could kill when we walked into the room. I asked her how she slept, and she said, like shit. My husband yelled at her, telling her she wasn't allowed to speak to me like that. And she said maybe she'd be in a better mood if I wasn't so loud in the mornings. Apparently, she had heard me singing in the shower that morning, and I had woken her up. She asked if we could keep it down in the mornings from now on. We were shocked. I'd never been spoken to by a guest like this before, especially a kid. She shut herself in her room for hours after that. We had to get back to work, but we were both worried about how this whole day was going to go. At about 7 p.m., she came out of her room. I had saved her a plate for dinner, so we assumed she was coming out to join us and eat. Instead, she slammed a piece of paper down on the counter and started heading for the front door. My husband asked where she was going, and she said, out with friends. He said there's no way she was going out by herself right now. God knows where with God knows whom. She's too young to be out by herself at night. I interrupted, asking her what the piece of paper she had set down was all about. It was a handwritten list, and I read it out loud. Keisha's house rules: no music or singing before noon. No gross food for dinner, aka vegetables. No boring TV shows. No asking dumb questions. No coming in my room. My husband laughed at the list, but the look on Keisha's face was dead serious. She actually expected us to follow her ridiculous rules in our own house. I had finally had enough of this crap. I headed towards the door as well and grabbed my coat and keys and told her to get in my car. She seemed confused but could tell by my tone that I wasn't messing around. She headed for my car and I told my husband we'd be back in a bit. We drove in silence for about 15 minutes. We were both fuming with anger. But after a while, Keisha realized she was unfamiliar with this part of town. She asked where we were going. I told her if she didn't want to stay with her parents and didn't want to stay with us, I was going to show her where she'd end up. We were entering downtown, and I could tell Keisha had never been to this part of the city by the look on her face. Every street corner was full of homeless people, all looking dirty and as if they were on drugs. There were tents and garbage everywhere. When we stopped at stoplights, people came right up to the windows and started knocking, asking for money. Some of them were angry, and one man even kicked the car as we drove off. I could tell this scared Keisha, but neither of us said anything. Then I turned into a parking lot and shut off the car, making sure to lock the doors. We were parked in front of a homeless shelter. There was a line out the door of people waiting in hopes of getting a hot meal or some blankets, or, if they were lucky, a roof over their head for the night. Some of the men were yelling and arguing with each other. Most of the women just looked sad. It was awful, and I was even feeling nervous to be there. Finally, Keisha asked me if we could get out of here. I told her if she was going to go back to our house, she had to follow our rules. And if she was going to stay with us, she needed to call her mom and apologize, because her parents only want what's best for her. She nodded, and I knew I had gotten the point across. I don't think anyone in her life had ever really put her in her place like that, but I think at that moment, a part of her also knew it was exactly what she needed. When we got home, my husband looked concerned. Of course, he was curious where I had taken her and what we had talked about, but I gave him a look that said I would tell him all about it later. We all went to the kitchen, and I pulled out the plate of leftover food that we had set aside for Keisha earlier. I heated it up for her, and we all sat down at the table together. My husband and I were surprised when Keisha was the one who spoke up first. She asked us what we both did for work. My husband was taken aback but was happy to answer her. After that, we had all had a long conversation about our jobs, colleges in the area, and different extracurricular activities she could join. It was actually a great evening. I may have been harsh on her, but I think I might have actually gotten through to her. Now, I just hope it sticks, and hopefully she can go back to her parents' house soon. I guess we'll see what happens after she apologizes to her mother. The day after we went to the homeless shelter, Keisha called her mom. She asked if I would sit with her while they spoke, and of course I agreed. She actually delivered an excellent apology to her mom. By the end of it, she had tears in her eyes. But she was smiling because her mom had accepted her apology and asked her to come home. She surprised me when she asked if she could stay with us a little bit longer. Her mother agreed, so we decided she would stay with us until the following Monday, when she had to go back to school. We may have had a rocky start, but I feel like this was the best possible outcome we could have had. It's been a few months since Keisha stayed with us. Since then, it's like she has done a complete 180 in her behavior. She hasn't had any other suspensions at school and also hasn't even had any detentions or been called to the office once. Her grades have gotten way better, and she even auditioned for her school dance team and made it. Her parents say that she hasn't been hanging out with the same friends and that her attitude at home has greatly improved. All in all, I'd say her time at our house was a success for her. I'm so proud of her and can't wait to see what her future holds. NAH. God bless you. Thank you for recognizing that she was just a child who needed some guidance. You would make an excellent mother. NAH. Great work, Auntie. Hopefully her parents are half as supportive as you are. My boyfriend is pretty mad at his parents over this, but some of his siblings and his parents think I was the jerk, so here we are. I, 29, female, am a pro boxer, though probably in my last year or two of active competing now. My boyfriend, 35, male, is really supportive of my career, and he's a total gem. We live on the opposite coast from his family, and he has had a pretty sour relationship with his dad for years, so I've never met them. Over the last year, though, his parents have been making efforts to patch things up, so when he mentioned that we were going to be in a nearby city to them for one of my matches, they wanted to get together for a family dinner. I was actually kind of excited about it. I don't have family, and his family is huge, so I always wondered what that was like. We originally tried to schedule the dinner for before the match because I look a mess for a couple of days after a match sometimes, but they had a conflict, so we set it up for a couple of days before we flew out to give me some recovery time. I actually didn't get that badly banged up, but there's just no hiding face bruises and cuts. My boyfriend already gave the parents a heads up about what to expect, but I don't think they took it seriously. We get there, and his mom looks really uncomfortable, and his dad is just like staring at me. Some of his siblings and their families were there, and I get mobbed by the nieces and nephews who all had about 1,000,000 questions, and that's where I might have messed up. I told them about boxing and showed them a video on my phone of part of my fight so they would understand why I looked hurt and assure them I was fine. It evidently impressed the hell out of a couple of the nieces because they spent the entire dinner asking me questions and were kind of amazed that girls could do stuff like that. His dad tried to shift the conversation several times and got pretty annoyed about it, and then said it was good I was thinking about retiring and getting on with a real life soon, and I would have time to get a household together and start a family with boyfriend. I told him that at most I would shift into being a trainer, and I've already got the life I want. His mom made a comment about it being a shame I was bruising up my pretty face, and I joked that this was my winner face. She should have seen the other woman. The whole thing was just uncomfortable and weird, except for the kids and one of his sisters when we got home. Boyfriend checked his texts and immediately called and yelled at his parents. I found out later that his mom told him I was really inappropriate and a bad influence on the kids. One of his brothers asked if he was going to bring Barbarian Barbie back to Christmas because his kids were bouncing off the walls. But his cool sister told him their daughter was already asking when Aunt OP was coming back. It really has caused a major problem between my boyfriend and his parents, and I'm wondering if I should have just kept the boxing stuff to myself. Barbarian Barbie sounds like a pretty great name to me. In any case, NTA, your boyfriend gave the family a heads up and still decided to move the dinner from before your fight to after. You have nothing to be ashamed about. I feel bad for some of those kids, though. It must suck having such narrow-minded, stifling parents, grandparents. NTA, you gave his parents a heads up about the natural consequences of your profession. They had ample opportunity to talk about it with their kids ahead of time had they wanted to. Assuming you are correct and they didn't take your warning seriously, they still had an opportunity once you were at the dinner to explain it in a kid-friendly fashion. In the absence of explicit guidance from them, you did a very natural and reasonable thing. You gave a simple and straightforward explanation of your visible injuries, complete with video evidence of where they came from. I'll admit I was both surprised and impressed with how you described your explanation, and then I realized that, like any other profession, you've probably had ample practice in responding to common questions about it. So I'm no longer surprised, but I am still quite impressed. NTA. The funny thing is that the family is completely overreacting. While it is very cool that girls can be boxers, most girls, and most boys for that matter, don't really want to be, which means, like many other things, kids get excited about. Their excitement about this will fade. I'm 40, female, and my cousin, 36, male, married his wife, 35, female, 5 years ago, and in that time she's been a welcomed member of our family. She's an academic and works as an assistant professor in a major city in the next state. Although she doesn't go to campus every day, she works from home the rest of the time. My husband, 42 male, and I stopped by their house a while for an unexpected visit and were shocked that their house was a bit unorganized. It wasn't horrible, but the floors could have been vacuumed and there were dirty dishes in the sink. My cousin's wife does most of the cleaning, but ever since she started her new job, she's had less time for it because she's always grading or teaching. My cousin doesn't clean much because his dad is very traditional about gender roles and didn't raise him to help his wife clean the house. My cousin's wife has done a good job in teaching him to do more around the house, but it's been a long process. When my cousin's wife had a birthday recently, my sister, 45, female, and I decided to buy her a Roomba to help her keep the house clean. My cousin had privately apologized to me after my last visit for the house not being as clean as it could have been, so my sister and I thought that the Roomba would be useful for her. Well, apparently it wasn't. She got upset at the implications that she was a bad housekeeper and that it was solely her responsibility to clean instead of encouraging our cousin to help her more often. The thing that angered me was that my cousin's wife donated the Roomba to Goodwill. If she didn't want the gift, she could have returned it to me so my sister and I could have gotten our money back. I don't think that I'm TA because she could use the help. But now my cousin tells me that my cousin's wife is still upset and won't come to family gatherings. The holidays are coming up and everyone will ask where she is when she doesn't show up. My cousin is mad because he'll be in the middle and forced to explain her absence diplomatically. AITA? Oh boy, YTA big time. First of all, with season changes, hectic jobs, and life in general, things sometimes have to temporarily fall to the wayside in order to juggle the greater priorities. You stop by for an unexpected visit and you're shocked that she was unprepared to receive visitors? I would understand concern if the house had piles and piles of stuff throughout, making it impossible to move and creating a health hazard. But dishes in the sink and unvacuumed, unswept floors are nothing. That's just normal, everyday life mess. Cousin's wife also said she works from home. What do you think that means? That means she's just sitting around, twiddling her thumbs, waiting for something to do while collecting a paycheck? Second, you say that your cousin's father taught him traditional gender norms, but it seems like your parents taught you the same. Along with examining why you're so judgmental, you should also examine what you've internalized and why you thought cleaning should fall to the woman in the family. Super weird cognitive dissonance on this front. And finally, I'm glad she donated it. You deserve to lose money for reinforcing gender roles and suggesting your cousin's wife isn't doing enough. Once you've gifted something, you don't get to choose what someone does with it. Honestly, I'm voting YTA. You went to her home and complained about the level of housekeeping. To her spouse, who you openly admit does little to help around the house. But not about her spouse, just to him. She has a demanding job and still does the majority of the housework that her husband doesn't do enough of. Yet you think it's appropriate to give her a vacuum cleaner as a birthday gift because her husband is too manly to help around the house sufficiently? Why not gift that to him on his birthday, since he's the one lacking? Also, her husband is also an AH. Why the hell did he explain the gift to her in that way? It was rude. YTA. A better gift for her would have been a gift card to a spa. She's working hard and isn't able to get all the chores done. Your cousin doesn't help with the housework because of whatever archaic gender roles he believes are the norm. Maybe you should have gotten your cousin a vacuum and cleaning supplies instead of his wife. It's super insulting to give that to her on her birthday. Unless she voiced to you that she wishes she had a Roomba, the gift was inappropriate.